There was a question that bothered me over Shabbos. Every morning on the Birchas HaTorah, or when it gets an Aliyah, we say, "Shebacha bona mikol ha'amim v'nosa lo es Toroso." God chose us of all the nations, and He gave us His Torah. I mean, according to the Gemara in Shabbos, God offered His Torah to all the nations of the world, and they rejected it. And then He offered it to us, and we said, Nasa v'nishma. So if He offered it to everyone, and He rejected it, and they rejected it, and the only ones who embraced it was us, did He choose us? God had to offer the Torah, and there were no takers. The only taker were the Jews. Is that called He chose us of all the nations to receive His Torah? You know, the Gemara tells of our story in Shabbos, and there's a children's book years ago. It was called Yosef Moker Shabbos. Yosef, the one who esteemed and valued Shabbos. And this person, Yosef, was an ordinary person of barely passable income, and he would spend exceptionally for Shabbos, to honor the Shabbos. And the stargazers said to this very wealthy heathen, non-Jew, that they saw in the stars that this person, Yosef, this Jew, is going to take over all his estates and all his wealth, and he's going to be left with nothing. So what did he do? He went and he sold everything he owned, and he bought a very valuable diamond. And he sewed the diamond into his hat, and he always wore this hat. Nobody knew of this. And one day he's crossing the bridge, a gale wind comes, plucks the hat off his head, falls into the ocean. It's the end. But even though he was pained that he lost all his wealth, but one thing he knew, Yosef the Jew is not getting his wealth. Okay? What happens? A large fish comes and swallows this hat, and the diamond is found in the fish. Is in the fish. The fishermen, they catch this very large fish, and it's for sale Friday, and they can't sell it. No takers for this fish. This Yosef comes, and they knew he's the only who always looked for the largest fish to honor his Shabbos. They were not Jewish fishermen. And they said, Yosef, we have this special fish. Would you want to buy it? He said, of course I'll buy it. As he opens the fish, he finds this very valuable diamond and becomes a very wealthy man. That's the story in the Gemara Shabbos. That's Yosef Moker Shabbos. So that he found the diamond, of course, God chose him that he should find the diamond. The other person lost the diamond. But the nations of the world, when they rejected the Torah, that was their free will. And they're even held culpable for rejecting the Torah, which God offered them. And the Jews were the only takers. Did God choose the Jews as His people? He had to give the Torah to someone. No one else was interested. But yet we say, He chose us of all the nations to give us His Torah. So how's this choosing us? That's the question that bothered me on Shabbos. So according to what we were saying last week, now, the Jews themselves, when they entered into the sea, as it says, when we said Ozi Osher, it says, Hamayim hoyolem choma miminam usmolam. The water was a wall to the right and left, and the word choma is spelled chema. The vav is deleted, so without the vowels, it could be read chema. The wrath of Hashem was upon the Jewish people as they passed through the walls of water. Why was it? Because the angels were saying, why are you killing the Egyptians? The Jews are no better. Elov de avodah zarah, Elov de avodah zarah. The Jews are idolaters as the Egyptians. Okay? That's what they said. So if we were over the avodah zarah, why did we merit to see Malchus Shamayim? When we said Zekei Livanveyu, which Chazal tell us that even the lowly slave maidservant at the sea saw something that Yechezkel HaNavi did not see. So we had said, what did she see? What were the Jews privy to at the splitting of the sea? God's majesty. Now, why were they privy to God's majesty? So if you look at Rashi, it says, Hashem split the sea on behalf of the Jews. So Rashi says, Ba'avur emunosam. He split the sea because they had emunah, that they went into an uncharted desert, and that was the faith in God. That's why Hashem split the sea for them. Because of that faith and belief they had in God, that He will provide for them, as He said He would. So we had asked a question, why did 80% die during the days of darkness? Because they weren't interested in going out. So the question he asked was, Hashem could have compelled them to leave, right? Why didn't He? So what we had said last week was, because if He would have compelled them to go out of Egypt, they wouldn't have been worthy to witness the Malchus Shamayim, to witness God's majesty. The only reason why they merited to witness God's majesty was they displayed their unswerving faith in Hashem, that they're willing to go into this uncharted desert. Okay? Therefore, when Hashem offered us the Torah at Sinai, why did we not reject it? The nations of the world, what does it say in Oz Yoshir? Nivelu al Lufi Edom. The princes of Edom were confused. They were paralyzed with fear. The Philistines trembled. What was going on? They heard how Hashem destroyed, but they witnessed nothing. They understood God's power, but they didn't see who God was. Hashem showed us who He is. When you see who He is, and that being offers you Torah, what do you say? You say Nasa v'nishma. So the only reason why we said Nasa v'nishma was because we were privy to Malchuscha, to God's majesty. If the 80% would have gone out with the Jews, they wouldn't have been worthy of that. And if they wouldn't have been worthy of that, they wouldn't have seen Malchuscha. So if they wouldn't have seen Malchuscha, they wouldn't have said Nasa v'nishma. If they wouldn't have said Nasa v'nishma, we accept unequivocally, the Jews wouldn't have received the Torah. So in what way did God choose us? By having 80% die during the days of darkness, and as a result of that, we were worthy to see His majesty. Once we saw His majesty, we said Nasa v'nishma. So He chose us by eliminating 80% who were not worthy. That's how He chose us. He put us in the position that we should be worthy to see Malchuscha. That's Hashabach Habana B'Kol Amim V'Nosel His Torah. Right? This is how I understood it. That's how He chose us. He chose us by allowing us to see something that the nations of the world did not see. That's Hashabach Habana B'Kol Amim. Okay, now, the nations of the world at Sinai, what happened at Sinai? The world was quaking, and the nations of the world thought the world was coming to an end. And they come running to Bilam. I mentioned this Gemara many times, Gemara in Zvachim, and they say to Bilam, God is destroying the world. So he said to them, how could He be destroying the world? He made a covenant with existence that He will never destroy the world again. So they said to Bilam, but maybe that's with water, the covenant He wouldn't destroy it. But maybe He's going to destroy it with fire. So Bilam says to them, you people, don't you realize you're a bunch of fools? Don't you realize Hashem ozlamo yitain? Don't you realize God is giving His power to His people? And they concluded, Hashem yivorach samo v'shalom. They said, let Hashem bless His people with peace. So the obvious question is, if the world was quaking to such a degree that they thought the world was coming to an end, what happened after they realized what was going on? Where did they go? They went back to their idolatry. I mean, seemingly understanding what it means that God enters into existence, the world's quaking, that it looks like it's coming to an end, don't you think you should embrace what the Jews are doing? They said, look, as long as we're in a safe haven, we're going back to the golf course, and we're going back fishing, and going back to our idolatry. How do we understand it? That's a question. So what I had said was, the Egyptians, what did they believe? Who is God? God is not the universal being. God is a power. He's a power. They have their powers. They have their deities. God, lahavdil, is a deity, except he's a very powerful deity. If you're his people and you cross that line, he will destroy you. But if you're not his people, you have no relationship with him, and he offered us, he says, do you want a relationship? We said, no, we're not interested. We're not interested. We're not bound by his laws. As a result, once they understood God has power, they knew he had the power. Where did they know he had power from? Because when the Egyptian armies were destroyed by the Yam Suf, by the Red Sea, and what happened? What does Moshe say in the Yoshir? All the nations of Canaan trembled from fear. So they know he's all powerful. But is he the omnipotent being? He's not. He's a power. As a result of that, they said, it's not relevant to us. It's not relevant to us. We're out of here. But the Jews who saw Malchuscha, they understood who he was. Therefore, when he offered them the Torah, they said Nasav Nishma. Because we'll discuss in a moment. Vayishma Yisro Choin Midyan Chosin Moshe. Yisro, the sheik of Midian, or the high priest of Midian, the father of Moshe, heard all that happened to the Jews. And he abandons all his glory to go out into the desert to become part of the Jewish people. He's the only sole individual of the whole world who was touched by Kriyas Yamsuf, although he did not witness it, to abandon everything to go into the desert. What did he understand no one else understood? He heard what they all heard. How Hashem had destroyed the Egyptians, and how he didn't witness Malchuscha. So if the nations knew he was the all-powerful one, but not the Almighty. There were other powers independent of him. So why was Yisro able to process it in a way to have an appreciation for truth, to abandon his glory, which no one else did? The secret lies that after the words Kohen Midyan, what does it say? Chosin Moshe. He was the father of Moshe. Now, who is Moshe? Moshe is the most special Jew who ever walked the face of the earth. Moshe had fled to Midian, and Yisro had taken him as a son-in-law. How many years did they have a relationship, Yisro and Moshe? Yisro was exposed to Moshe for 60 years. That's how many years he's exposed to him. We say, Tov l'tzadik, Tov l'shcheno. It is good for the tzaddik, and it's good for his neighbor. Because just by being exposed to his behavior and his existence, automatically you're impacted. So therefore, his whole processing of every event that takes place is at a different level. He has a different level of insight, perception, and analysis, which no one else has. So when he hears what happens at Yam Suf, although he didn't witness it, he didn't see God's glory. What does he do? He says, for that, I abandoned all my glory to go become part of the Jewish people. But it's only because he was Chosid Moshe, because he was the father of Moshe for that reason. Otherwise, it's as they say, it's not to be understood. Every nation, everybody heard exactly what happened, and yet the only one who was touched by it is Yisro, no one else is touched by it.